The other important aspect of putting together and producing good wines is the ability to be able to blend, to take one variety and add it to another variety in some percentage that makes some sense. What you're doing there is perhaps adding a wine that is filling what might a gap or a hole that the base wine or the major component is perhaps missing. For instance, when we make Cabernet Sauvignon, sometimes Cabernet Sauvignon is missing an earthy character, an herbal or earthy character. So there's some varieties, Cabernet Franc is one, Petit Verdot is another, that helps round out the edges and fills in the holes, as it were, the gaps, and makes the whole obviously greater than the sum of its parts. We do the blending portion of it anywhere from 1 year to 2 years, so that after 1 year, once the wine takes on a character of wine and goes past that adolescent stage of being just fermented grape juice and actually takes on some aromas of wine, characters perhaps from the barrel and from the air interplay through the barrel, then you start to assess the quality of the wine and perhaps what the wine is lacking, where then you can, through blending, fill it out. In between fermenting the wine and blending, there's the barrel aging process. And barrels serve several different purposes. We put wine into new barrels because it's been found that the flavoring from new wood, especially oak, augments the flavor and adds a richness and adds aroma and character to the wine. The other important aspect and factor that barrels provide is there is an interplay between inside the barrel, the wine in the barrel, and the air on the outside of the barrel. And this interplay, this intake of minute quantities of oxygen to the wine develops aromas and flavors. Without that development, without that interplay with the air, the exchange with the air, wines would be pretty mundane and without a lot of aroma and character. Now, that being said, there are some varieties that inherently have quite a bit of character aroma-wise, things like Gewürztraminer and Sauvignon Blanc. But Cabernet Sauvignon and in particular Chardonnay in the white varieties, they need that interplay with the air to develop flavors and aromas. When they make the barrels, they do this fantastic process. They have the barrels open on the ends and they set them over a small fire, and they literally, it's called toasting the barrel. And what that does is it chars or slightly looks like it burns the inside of the barrel. And what that does is it caramelizes the natural wood sugars and gets rid of the astringency and other harsh components that you may find in a barrel, and adds a nice little smoky character in some cases. Some coopers and some manufacturers of barrels do this toasting level to a greater degree than other ones. And you end up, when you deal with barrel people for a while, you end up knowing how this guy toasts his barrels versus what this guy does, and you know what to expect from those level of toast. But the toasting sort of cauterizes essentially the cells inside the barrel and caramelizes the wood sugars and makes them taste great.
Gary really kind of brought to the table here at Miner some, little more risky techniques, things like natural yeast fermentations as opposed to using inoculated, commercially bred yeast. I've never been a big fan of filtration, so we kind of try to not filter wines if there's no real biological reason to filter wines.
You filter the wines for two reasons. One is to remove any microbes, any small organisms that maybe will eat something in your wine, sugar if you're doing a sweet wine, or bacteria if perhaps some other processes aren't quite finished. So you filter for microbial, we call it microbial reasons, to remove small microbes. And the other reason you would filter wine is for clarity purposes. In some varieties and some, I guess, price levels of wine, people expect their wine to be a certain brilliancy in terms of being able to pass light through. We call that clarity. Wines like, say, Burgundies, Pinot Noirs here, people on the high-end market don't expect those wines to be what we call brilliant. They can have a slight degree of murkiness at the high end and high-quality wines. Same thing with some other Cabernets. They don't have to be brilliantly clear. But if you desire your wines to be brilliantly clear and you have microbial, you want what we call microbial stability, then filtration is necessary or an option. If I had my way with all my wines, I wouldn't filter them because it's a more natural way to make wine. A little sediment in wine, and that's why we stand them up before we open them for a while. You buy one at the store or the shop and it's lying on the seat of your car. Before you open it, maybe you set it up for 2-3 hours, so all the sediment that is in there will settle to the bottom. And that last inch or two of wine maybe is a little chewy. Caves in the Napa Valley have been around for quite some time. A sparkling wine producer north of St. Helena there in the northern part of the valley, Schramsberg, their caves were dug by the Chinese railroad builders when they weren't building railroads, or when they were finished, 1860s, 1850s. Most of the caves now that have been, that either being constructed or that were constructed in the last 10 or 15, 20 years around the Napa Valley were indeed dug out by machines. And these machines are very, very similar to the machines that they used to dig a channel going from England to the continent. Probably very similar to what they used in the Big Dig over in Boston. Caves are very, very useful for wine aging for several reasons. In an environment such as the cave, the humidity naturally gets very, very high. So when you do have evaporation out of the barrels, which you invariably do, you're going from a supersaturated, high, humid condition, the inside of the barrel, to outside of the barrel, high humidity. So you get very little evaporation. People ooh and ah when they come in the cave. They walk down the stairs here and they look down that 260-foot row of Main Avenue with all the arms going off of it, and they're very, very much in awe and very impressed with the whole cave structure. So it's a great place to have caves. Also, when the big earthquake comes with these 6-inch thick walls, this is a good place to be.